All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and today is Friday. It is actually the last Friday before this ranked season ends. It's ending on March 25th. So Friday, as I record this, it's the 20th, so we've got about 4 or 5 days left to finish this ranked season. Today's video, I'm going to bring to you and let you know what decks you should be playing for this last stretch of the ranked season. If you're looking to hit Master Ball this week, last minute, or if you're looking to climb as high as possible, maybe get that top 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 badge, whatever it might be. Now, again, the metagame, this ranked season has been pretty solidified. Like, it's interesting. We had a lot of progression early in the season when all of the new cards got released because Paldean Wonders brought a bunch of strong cards into the metagame. However, things are definitely a certain way right now, and I think that's definitely changing the viability of certain decks that you might be looking to play on the ranked ladder. So that's what we're going to break it down today. And we have, I think, 7 total decks. We have 6 top decks and then a wild card deck for you guys to test out. One thing I always say is that, any of these decks might work for you. None of them might work for you. There's a ton of really good decks that you can be playing. These are just the decks that I would choose for you, I suppose, if I had to, right? Utilizing data and results from the past week of tournaments, these are the decks that I think are going to do the best. But before we get into it, don't forget to register for PMPT number 24, Paldean Pinnacle. It is the last tournament of the season this weekend, Saturday, March 21st. It's actually tomorrow, so definitely come and play. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We will be live streaming it here on the channel. And then before we actually get into the deck list, we have a sponsor for today's video. So let's go and check out our sponsor. All right, guys, before we hop into today's video, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, LD Player. LD Player is a free Android emulator for PC that lets you play mobile games like Pokemon TCG Pocket directly on your computer. I've been using LD Player to play Pokemon Pocket on my PC for quite some time now. It's a great application to use if you're looking to have smoother gameplay and have a nice wide resolution while you're playing. It's really helpful for when I'm recording videos so I don't have a super narrow display. Also, you don't have to worry about battery drain because it's on your PC. You don't have to worry about storage space on your phone and no interruptions while you're playing. The performance is very solid on LD Player. It even has multi-instance support. You can run multiple sessions if you want to manage different accounts or just experiment with different setups. Another great thing about LD Player is the latest Hyper-V compatible version, which lets you run games smoothly without having to disable Hyper-V on your PC. So if you want to play Pokemon Pocket on your PC the best way possible, go check out the link down in the description below and get LD Player. All right, now let's get back to today's video. All right, guys, let's dive right back into it. The first deck that we're going to talk about is actually Giratina and Darkrai. Now, Giratina Darkrai has always been a pretty decent deck list. It was definitely something that struggled a little bit in previous seasons, but this new rendition of Giratina Darkrai has been doing really consistently well in online tournament play. And one thing I always utilize is the data from tournaments to kind of justify or I guess figure out, what decks are best given the current metagame right now. One of the biggest things that's happening at the end of the season, the biggest sort of progression that's basing my meta viability for all of these decks is the lack, or I should say, the lesser amount played of Oricorio at this point in the season. Does that make sense? So early on, Magnezone, Bellibolt, and Oricorio was like the best deck. It was everywhere. It was dominating. Then the metagame definitely kind of swapped around that. So basically at this point, Oricorio was really not that much of a factor. A lot of the decks that we're going to talk about today are strong regardless of, or I guess they're strong if Oricorio isn't like super popular in the metagame, right? Giratina Darkrai always has been able to handle, things like Oricorio somewhat well. However, I will say Magnezone Oricorio, the new rendition, plus when you add Bellibolt into it, that's not a great matchup for Giratina Darkrai. But one thing is for sure is that this deck right now has been doing very, very well. We have, of course, the Giratina Darkrai combo, 1 Indeedee. So what this deck list does here is it chips for 20 damage and heals for 20 damage. When you combine the Giant Cape and the Starting Plains, these Pokemon have an insane amount of HP. They're basically mega Pokemon. Giratina has 190. Darkrai has 180 if you combine Giant Cape and Starting Plains. But Starting Plains is going to buff the HP of all of these Pokemon at the same time while they're on your board, and that's a really big deal. What's really nice, too, I think, about Giratina Darkrai right now is that we can utilize Peculiar Plaza, which not only gives Giratina free retreat, but Indeedee free retreat. And sometimes you do lead with Indeedee, or you lead Giratina and you want to like get them out of the active. So it's a really nice stadium card to have. Rocky Helmet to boost the damage, Red to boost the damage, Guzma to kind of discard certain tool cards that might be increasing your opponent's HP, like Giant Cape or Rocky Helmet. Sabrina Cyrus, that's always the biggest upside to Giratina Darkrai, is that it has so much room to play so many cards that are useful in the matchup. It's definitely more of a slow burn deck. The metagame right now seems very much, it's hard to describe it. It seems very like fast paced, very high rolly, very explosive. Giratina Darkrai kind of goes against that, but also does a really good job in this, in the matchups against a lot of those decks, which is very interesting. It's just something that I think has been buffed so much very slowly over the last few expansions. At this point, it's really kind of, boiling over, and it's a very respectable deck right now. Again, its win rates in online tournaments this week have been really strong, so it's something that I had to recommend. And honestly, I might play some Giratina Darkrai myself unranked. It seems actually kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, there it is. Are you surprised by Giratina Darkrai? You shouldn't be. It's actually a really, really good deck right now. Just not many people playing it. Next up is High Roll Altaria, or Greninja Altaria. This is still one of the strongest decks in the entire game. Honestly, I mean, I think that for a long time, and it's been a long time since we've first talked about this deck, I think it'll always be a good choice for ranked. This is probably still, and probably will be for a while, the strongest deck in the game. The possibility of having Greninja and Altaria set up and ready to attack on turn 2 is a little crazy. Chingling Lock, Training Arena to boost the damage. This is a deck that is just really, really annoying for so many different reasons. One, because when you play against this deck, there's really nothing you can do about it unless you're also playing Chingling and you can win the Chingling battle and stop your opponent from getting their Greninja out. That's effectively the only thing you can do to stop this deck from just sort of toppling over you. Now, it's not like Suicune Greninja, where you're not drawing 2 cards every turn. You are a bit reliant on your researches and your copycats to kind of move through your deck. You don't always get all of the cards in the correct order. This is a very inconsistent deck in that sense, but a very strong deck. That's why we call it like High Roll Altaria. Absolutely insanity. Not much else to really say about Altaria Greninja. Again, like you could play, the middle evolution and 1 rare candy, like 1 Frogadier, 1 rare candy. That version of this deck has been somewhat common, but we're not necessarily entrenched, I don't know, in a Chingling based metagame right now. Lots of decks are not playing Chingling, so while Chingling is a very useful card, I don't think it's something that we necessarily have to be afraid of when we're playing this deck, at least right now. Dark Greninja can be a little bit annoying, but I don't know how many people are going to be playing Dark Greninja. It's definitely still a strong deck, but anyway, Greninja Altaria, absolutely still insane. You gotta try this out if you've never tried it. It really is quite ridiculous. All right, so we talked about how Oricorio Magnezone is not seeing that much play right now, but I still think Bellibolt is really good. This is kind of a more high-rolled, like turbo way to play Bellibolt, kind of aggro. It's like an aggro Bellibolt deck. Bellibolt typically loves to just sort of go second and just sort of start hitting for a lot of damage. This is a deck that when you play Pichu and electric generators and whatnot, you can kind of get around that, and you have some options going first, and that can feel pretty decent. So this is just as fast-paced as Bellibolt as you possibly can. Training Arena means that we hit for 150 damage max. We are playing Rocky Helmet, so this is basically about maximum speed, maximum damage. The one downside to playing Bellibolt like this is that Zeraora and Pichu are both relatively low HP single prize Pokemon. And Bellibolt, although it's a high HP 2-prize Pokemon, is still a 2-prize Pokemon, right? So the prize math can be a little bit awkward here. You kind of want to force your opponent to go Bellibolt and then have to KO another Bellibolt, but if they have a way to kind of Sabrina around the Bellibolts or maybe get to Pichu, that can be kind of a difficult thing to deal with, right? Pichu is a bit of a liability. If we had a way to kind of scoop up our bench Pokemon, it would actually be really, really good for this deck list. I guess we do have some ways to do that, but it's just not something you're really playing in this deck. Double Copycat, double Research, double Pokeball. Again, one of those decks that just relies on the trifecta of those 3 cards to draw through their deck. 1 Sabrina, 1 Cyrus. Lucky Ice Pop is kind of underrated. I think that most decks, at least in ranked, can benefit from playing at least 1 Lucky Ice Pop because it's just sort of a win now card. You kind of keep it in your hand until the late game and you're like, well, I need to heal 100 HP this turn, and if I can, then I win. So you just sort of let the dice roll, and maybe it's a 5% chance, whatever it is. At least you're giving yourself a chance to win, It's one of those types of things. So a Lucky Ice Pop is definitely worth it. Electric Generator is an interesting card. Like, it's definitely meant to be played with Bellibolt, but I don't really know if it's nice in the scenarios where maybe your opponent's getting off to a fast start and you can get like 1 attack off with Bellibolt, but then it's going to go down on the next turn. Generator can kind of help you get that second Bellibolt up and running a little bit quicker. So I do like one Electric Generator, but again, we're kind of pressed for space in this deck list, and I think that Rocky Helmet is pretty relevant. And the breakpoints are really what matter here, right? So Training Arena is 150, Rocky Helmet plus Training Arena is 170, and that's why we're playing both of these, is to get to that 170 number. Definitely nice for things like Mega Absol and whatnot. Also things like Suicune, Giratina, Darkrai when they have their stadium or a giant cape up, right? A lot of 160 plus HP Pokemon. So yeah, I really like Turbo Bellibolt. It's been my favorite deck this entire season. I know the Magnezone Oricorio stuff was much more popular and relevant in tournament play for a while, and that makes sense because Oricorio is broken. You know what I mean? So in tournament play, if Oricorio is relevant, then it's always going to be the best option. But this, to me, it always felt like sort of the most original Bellibolt deck, right? This is a deck that's focused around Bellibolt, and I really like that. And that's why this has been my favorite deck of the season. But yeah, shout out to Bellibolt. Shout out to this deck list. I tried for a while, like I was playing this deck a little bit differently. I was like playing no Ice Pop, and I was playing no Pichu, but I was playing double Generator, and I was playing double Elemental Switch. So instead of like relying on Pichu to get Bellibolt up and running on your second turn going first, I was just running Elemental Switch with the Zero Auras, and oftentimes still able to go and attack on my second turn going first. Not for 140, but for 70 damage, which is enough to KO a lot of basic Pokemon. That's kind of how I was playing it, but I think Pichu's also a really good card. It really depends on how much of a liability it seems to be, because there's definitely some Greninjas still running around, but Suicune doesn't play Greninja, and that's what's interesting about this season particularly. Next up is going to be Altaria Gourgeist. So even though there's not that much Oricorio in Ranked, this is still just a really, really strong deck. Probably the most consistent deck in the entire game. You're always going to have an option. This deck can always do something and do something early in the game, which is just really, really nice, whether it's a turn 2 attack with Gourgeist, a turn 1 item lock with Chingling, or turn 2 Mega Harmony with Altaria. You're able to just sort of deal damage and tank hits pretty effectively throughout the entire game. Jirachi for the bench damage. We're even playing Mars with Chingling, which again, I love when we can tech in some hand disruption with Chingling. One Sabrina, one Cyrus. We are seeing the Sabrina Cyrus core just throughout the entire season. The last couple of seasons really did feel like most decks were just playing Greninja and double Cyrus, and it was kind of annoying, quite frankly. Now it seems like we have a nice little mix of Sabrina and Cyrus in all of these decks, which to me feels kind of correct, to have one of each. And it just makes me feel a little bit better about the current state of the metagame. I know not everybody loved this season. There's definitely a lot of really strong decks, but the way those decks play, of course, sometimes some people might not love, which is totally fine and understandable. But I personally enjoyed this season and how many different decks were very viable. But yeah, nothing else to really say. It's Altaria. If you're playing some version of Altaria, you're going to do quite fine. Honestly, like nobody's really playing it in tournaments, but if I had to suspect a really decent way to play Altaria right now would just to be not playing like Gourgeist, like playing double Chingling, double Altaria, and then maybe some other Pokemon, but playing like maximum disruption, like Red Card and Mars and stuff. That honestly seems to be just like enough to win a lot of games with Altaria. Training Arena was an insane buff. I'm not going to lie, to Mega Altaria. It made it a lot better because it goes from 130 to 140, and that's a much better number. 140 is a much better number than 130. But anyway, shout out to Altaria, one of the best Pokemon of all time at this point. Okay, so speaking of Suicune, like we just mentioned, what's interesting is, like I said, less Oricorio, less Magnezone, which is a really big deal because Suicune and Qianpao really did not like the Oricorio Magnezone matchup. So because not many people are playing Oricorio Magnezone right now, at least at the end of the season, Suicune and Baxcalibur really has opened up as, again, one of the best decks to play right now. Again, very suspect for a couple of weeks there. Basically, this was something that led off the season incredibly dominant, kind of faded when the counter meta rose and sort of developed around this deck. And then since the counter meta became the meta and then sort of also dipped down in meta share, Suicune Baxcalibur has kind of risen back up. So think of it like it's sort of like a wave. I don't know. It goes up and then down and then up. And at the end of the season, or at least going into this fourth week, I think Suicune Baxcalibur is definitely on the rise. Always one of the strongest decks. Like throughout this entire season, it's been very, very strong. It was so strong that the metagame was sort of developed around beating this deck list. And that's not so much the case into this fourth week. So I really like this deck. Again, pretty standard as far as, all of these decks have been throughout the season. I don't think this list has really changed much. Starting Plains and Giant Capes. Of course, we have an Inflatable Boat, which is really useful, to be fair, in this deck for Frigibax and Qianpao. Just a really nice tool card. It fits really well in here. Same with Starting Plains. Just really, really good stuff. So many strong cards in the game. The power creep is absolutely insane. Playing one Pokemon Center Lady and not Irida. So that's the one thing that kind of is surprising here. But people are playing Pokemon Center Lady, and quite frankly, I think it does make a little bit of sense. A lot of Altarias, a lot of Swablu, Sleep going around, other status conditions. So I think Pokemon Center Lady is actually kind of a smart decision. I know Irida is more healing overall. Mars, you still got to play Mars and Suicune decks for that card advantage, particularly for the mirror matchup. Suicune and Mars is like a match made in heaven, always has been. But yeah, Pokemon Center Lady, interesting. One Copycat, double research. Now, Copycat's also an interesting one. People back in the day, like with Suicune and Greninja, used to play like May sometimes, or they used to just sort of cut the Copycat from their deck. I think Copycat is just so universally useful. And even if like, you know, your opponent doesn't have that many more cards in hand than you, most of the time we can basically just sort of refresh our hand, which is nice when you're playing Rare Candy Baxcalibur. So I really like it. I like Suicune Baxcalibur right now. It's probably going to be like a top 2, top 3 deck, in my honest opinion, if you were looking to play ranked right now. So heavily recommended towards the end of the season. I think you're going to do pretty well. If you seem to be hitting a ton of lightning decks, or of course, Chingling can be a little bit annoying against this, so the Altaria stuff's a little bit suspect, but you should do well into Hydreigon and into most things, honestly, this season. So if you're not seeing that much Magnezone or Choreo on the ranked ladder, this should be a really strong choice for you. I bet a bunch of people have never stopped playing this deck. They've just been playing it all season, but this is definitely a pretty decent time to play Suicune and Baxcalibur. Next up, this is the last deck that we have here before the weekly wild card, and it is Steelix. Like, again, this is a deck that not only did well last weekend in the tournament, but has continued to have very good win rates and good placements in tournaments all throughout the week. So given the current state of the metagame, I just feel really strongly that Mega Steelix is a legitimate deck right now. It's so funny because these stall strategies, although a bit reliant on Lucky Ice Pop, which can be kind of annoying, kind of really utilize it better than any other deck in the entire game, other than like maybe Hydreigon, but it's a different type of utilization. Basically, Hydreigon uses Lucky Ice Pop to basically always heal for 20, sometimes heal for 40, but the concept is that you can heal and then get it back for next turn when you're going to use Hydreigon's ability again. Mega Steelix is different. The damage every turn that Mega Steelix is taking is so little. Between Adamantine rolling, the effect of the attack for Mega Steelix, which is minus 20 damage, plus Heavy Helmet, every time you take an attack, you're taking 40 less damage, right? So if you get hit for 120 or 140, well, you're actually only getting hit for 100 damage or 80 damage. Indeedee's going to heal up 20 or 40 damage, and then we have Lucky Ice Pop to also heal. So it's basically one of those things where if Lucky Ice Pop does get a single good coin flip, if you can get like 100 HP, 80 HP healing off of your Ice Pops, that's sometimes enough to just win the game outright because you're able to take so much damage anyway. This is honestly a pretty decent deck list. It is a bit slow, but what's crazy about the metagame right now is that you can kind of afford to be a bit slower. It's one of the weirder things about this season. Most decks are operating between turn 2, but turn 3, and turn 2 if they go second most of the time. So like turn 3 seems to be sort of the average that decks get set up. And Steelix can get set up on turn 3. It's very possible. If you go second and if you get Brox, it's much more doable than you might think, honestly. Protective Poncho here to keep at least one of our Indeedees alive. This is useful for Chien-Pao. You don't need double Poncho. If they go ahead and try to attack Indeedee, then that means that they're not attacking Steelix, which means they're never going to win. So that Suicune Chien-Pao matchup is actually a pretty decent matchup. If you do hit Oricorio, we have Dig Onyx, which is just going to solo that matchup pretty much. I really like Steelix. It's kind of crazy to me that this is like one of the best decks to play currently in the metagame, but you know what? That's what the season turned into. Just a ton of surprises. It really was one of the more surprising seasons that we've ever had in Pokemon Pocket, and Mega Steelix is very relevant. I'm really curious because I think there's so many decks right on the fringe of like meta viability and like real meta contention that once this new set comes out, if we even get just like one new top tier meta strategy, I think the entire metagame is going to just sort of like just go crazy. It's going to completely flip around. So I'll be really interested to see how that works. But Mega Steelix, not much has changed, but still a really good deck. Better than it ever has been, honestly, right now. It's got to be something I recommend. You may be like, isn't this kind of a slow deck for ranked? It's not like a stall deck. It's just a deck that doesn't lose like in the late game. Like it's able to kind of go extra turns. And like, yeah, sure, like you might be not winning games on like turn 2 or turn 3 like you sometimes do with Hydreigon, but you're oftentimes increasing your opportunity to win with games that go turn 7, turn 8 and stuff like that. Which, to be fair, was always kind of the case for Pokemon Pocket, and I enjoy playing decks that can kind of get into the late game a little bit more. Shout out to Mega Steelix, man. I love this deck. Lastly is going to be a really similar deck, which is Guzzlord. So again, something that is definitely, and this is the weekly wild card, by the way. This is the weekly wild card for the week, and it is Guzzlord. I think a little bit less confidently about Guzzlord than I do Steelix, although the decks are very, very similar. I think that Guzzlord is incredibly fun, right? So the exact same concept for Mega Steelix, although it's just Guzzlord instead of Mega Steelix, which is effectively hilarious. But you know, Guzzlord is a really strong Pokemon. You know, we're definitely reliant a little bit on the energy discarding with the Grindcore effect. But what's really cool about Guzzlord is your ability to kind of chain multiple Guzzlords together. Because we're playing 4 Pokemon instead of 6, we have room for a couple other things like starting planes, like a second protective Poncho, and of course Lucamine in here. This is a really, really fun deck. One that I've had an incredible time playing just because I'm a huge Guzzlord fan, and whenever it can be relevant in the metagame, that's a really big deal. It's kind of crazy to see like all of the new cards that get added to the game, right? The combination of Poncho, Indeedee, starting planes, heavy helmet, lucky ice pop, like all of a sudden like you can play Guzzlord in a completely different way, kind of the way that we envisioned or imagined we'd maybe be able to play Guzzlord back when it came, when it first released like a year ago. Really fun to see kind of what it's become to this point. And yeah, shout out to Guzzlord. Honestly, one of my favorite Pokemon in the entire game. Just such a funny strategy and a funny Pokemon. I would probably recommend the Steelix deck a little bit more than this deck. Of course, you auto lose kind of to Oricorio. Kind of like you can probably just survive forever into Oricorio. So it's not even that bad of a matchup, but it is interesting. You know, it's going to be an interesting one. So with Steelix, you can actually just sort of win the matchup pretty easily, but this is kind of another story. So yeah, love Guzzlord. It's going to be the wild card this week. If you want to play something that's just absolutely hilarious, this is what I would recommend is Guzzlord Indeedee. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's it. That's the video. Shorter one today. Again, like we've seen most of these decks before. I just wanted to kind of give like a quick little update when we kind of get into the rest of the season. Again, only 5 days left. Playing the tournament this weekend, playing PMPT number 24. I believe on Sunday, Godsley is hosting like another big like $1,500 tournament. So if you're available on Sunday, but not Saturday, then definitely go and play in the Godsley tournament. But if you're available all weekend, you know, come and play on Saturday. You know, if you kind of make it into Sunday, then you can kind of choose which tournament you'd rather play in. But if you can play on Saturday, but you don't make day 2 for PMPT, then just go ahead and you can play in Godsley's tournament on Sunday. Really, really fun. Monday, we'll probably cover the results of both tournaments because I assume that $1,500 tournament is going to be really, really large, which is really exciting. So I'm really curious to see how that goes. And again, next week, we should be getting leaks and data mines and more information about the next expansion, which comes out, I think, on Thursday, maybe Wednesday. I don't even know. I don't know. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Peace out. Have a good one. And yeah. Bye.